Free agency is underway, and the Titans are moving at a breakneck speed. We'll cover that and more after the bump. What's going on, Titans fans? Welcome back into another edition of the Morning Glory Show. Thanks for checking us out. Make sure you go like and subscribe everywhere. But I am your host, Jake Robertson. Follow me on any social at Glory Days Sports. I'm joined today by B-Will at B-Will TFTV and Jonathan Miller over at Esports Valiant, host of the All Things Titans podcast and show. Today we got a bit of jam-packed show for you. We're going to be covering the Snoomers, the Sneed rumors. We're going to be grading free agency thus far and hopping into that. But how are we doing today, boys? How are you, B-Will?
Good, man. I'm good. Can't complain. I'm trying to get some traction on these Sneed rumors, man. I don't know if it goes longer, if it's better, if we get it done sooner, who knows? I don't know if, leverage and all that. We'll see, man. I want to get a resolution to it, man.
What do you think, Jonathan?
Man, excited thus far in free agency. I let my heart just, put the L'Jarius Sneed thing away, and then here it comes, just pulling me back in. So and talk about it today.
I mean, how I see it is, like they've reported that they're bringing in Tre'Davious White for a meeting, and if they explore that option, you got to think that you want this deal to get done sooner rather than later. If it's for the Sneed, you don't want to allocate those resources to another position and then him eventually not even be a starter behind Awuzie and Sneed and then McCreary in the slot. It's good to have depth, of course. If it's Sneed for the 23rd, give me that at 38. I don't know about Sweat at 38. We can talk more about that. But yeah, it's been reported that the compensation for this draft pick is we're looking at a 2025 third. And if that's the case, it's surprising. I'm all in if that's that. And it seems to be just contract negotiations are the thing that's holding this up. And Sneed, he wants to be paid. He wants to be the highest paid corner in the league. And it's been reported in the beginning of this process, he was looking at like 24 average annual value per year. And that's not just the highest. That's highest by an extent. I believe the guy in Green Bay is getting paid 21. So $3 million per year more. Jair Alexander. It sounds like they're kind of moving it closer to the 22. And if that's the case, I'm all in. How do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, I think people got to think that, when players go into this and agents go into this, they're going to throw that top dollar out there of what they want. That way they can negotiate from that starting point. They're not going to say, if they really want 22, they're not going to say, yeah, we want 22. No, they're going to go a little above that. Let's try and fall in the middle somewhere. So my thinking is room. Exactly. My thinking is the Titans are probably, if the contract is the holdup, which is you have some conflicting reports saying that it's draft comp, but I don't know if it's draft comp or not. But if we're going that the contract is the holdup, Titans probably start at 20. Sneed probably starts at 24. We got to find some way to get in the middle. We've got the money to do it. So,
yeah,
Rand's got to find a way.
Yeah, he's got to find a way, and we certainly can't miss out on another, superstar player over a couple $1 million. So, a part of me feels like maybe we're not getting the whole story right now, because if the Titans offered, 4 years, $80 million, that's $20 million AAV. That means we're only a couple dollars off of what he might be looking at, annually. But to me, it's probably like the guaranteed money is probably a part of it too. It's certainly not just the annual value year to year. I'm sure he's trying to secure his bag. He's 27 years old, some injury concerns. Like, this is likely his last big contract of his career. So, he's going to make sure the money is right, which makes sense. I totally get it. The draft compensation thing, it feels like, the reports are really solid. It was more than one Kansas City reporter who basically said, look, the deal was done with the Titans and it fell through. I don't think it fell through. I think that negotiations probably stalled between Sneed's camp and the Titans and saying like, okay, well, what are we willing to pay? And I think this is evidence because the same thing happened day two when the whole Calvin Ridley thing was happening, right? Because I remember I made a video on it because I thought to myself, Ran Carthon's not just sitting on $70 million doing nothing, right? Like other free agents are being signed. Naturally, what's happening is when you're negotiating with the camp of another player, if that player is priority, you're spending a lot of time going back and forth with that agent. So they know like, hey, you're the priority. So the fact that we have no signings happening really during this time tells me that yet again, Ran is trying to put the focus and priority on Sneed so that way they can decide who they are going to fill the rest of the roster with. Because if it is Sneed, if this is true and the Sneed deal happens, then we're going to have like little onesie twosie signings, like depth guys maybe leading into that'll be the last splash signing of the offseason. So hopefully there's some validity to that.
I think Real G's move in silence like lasagna, and I think Ran is doing a great job of that this offseason. Half of these free agents that we've signed thus far haven't been reported to come into the building. It just shows out of nowhere, especially like the Calvin Ridley signing. There was no reports. There was the dark horse and the quiet, and that turned out to be the Titans. I think this is very similar to that. And in the initial trade discussions, it was all Colts. And then the Colts fell back. The Titans rise up. And I agree. I think the discussions are still ongoing. I lean towards paying the man. When I look at this roster, it's lacking star talent. And we got some more through this offseason with bringing in Ridley, of course. But I'm looking at 2025, 2026. Who's on this roster that you're paying? Are you paying DeAndre Hopkins next year? Are you paying Elijah Molden? Probably not. Are you paying Amani Hooker or McCreary maybe in 2026? I could lean towards maybe the McCreary, but you're not paying top dollar for a slot corner, regardless of how good he is.
What names are cutting that ribbon on the new stadium? That's really what we should be thinking about from this year to next offseason. That's going to be a focus of the Titans. They've got to get some marketable people, and Levis should be that guy we all hope and pray. Jeff, we're still lacking a little there. So
yeah, who they putting on the banners at Nissan Stadium even next season? Who's going on there? Harold Landry, Will Levis, Pollard. It starts to get thin. You start to run out of guys, and like I was just thinking about that yesterday. I was like, man, every season I go to the Titans Pro Shop at the stadium and check it out and buy something. And then every single time I crack some joke because I'm parking in the parking lot, walking up to the stadium and looking up at the banners, and the banners change frequently. And I was just thinking to myself, like, hey, next season when I walk up to the stadium, who's on those banners? They got to change them again. The King is gone. And so it'll be tough. Like, you don't put those assets like D-Hop on those assets necessarily because I think the writing's kind of on the wall. Maybe Calvin Ridley is the guy. But yeah, I think that's a great point. Like, looking at the Titans roster long term, you start to obviously we're managing our money this season and that money rolls over to next season. And though we don't know what's going to happen with the cap, we can safely assume that it's going to grow based off of the media deals and things that have been happening recently. And so with that makes you think okay, you want to be conservative you want to be smart with the money. You don't want to just spend it all. But at the same time, you got to start adding some talent to the team and taking a look at the landscape of who's available and who makes sense. The big splash wide receiver probably doesn't make sense at this point. You got your wide receiver 1 in Calvin Ridley for the future, at least. You're probably going to draft wide receiver 2 or have some construction going on there in the draft this year because it's so strong. But beyond that, who can you go sign? So I think that, I am on board with going after L'Jarius Sneed, especially if it's a 25 third compensation. I know the other thing was they basically said it was either a 25 third or a pick swap of the second round this year, which in essence is almost 30 spots. Like it's a pretty large gap. So that value is third round pick value. And so I think I'd be okay with moving from 38 to 64 or whatever it is in that swap, is if it means adding a talent like L'Jarius.
How refreshing is it for us to go through this offseason, go through this process, and have minimal leaks like that? A leak, and I'll be honest, and I love Levis to death, but a leak really changed the landscape of this franchise last draft.
Who's having a terrible free agency? Diana Rossini. Oh, she's in shambles. All right, the Athletic is.
She's not Mike Vrabel's pocket this year.
No, she is not. Her sources are loose at best, and it's no shade to Diana Rossini. I think it's just funny. The reporter game is kind of interesting too because all the ESPN reporters are the Colts were never in it, and then the Athletic and the other reporters or NFL reporters are they definitely were in it. So it's just it's funny because you're seeing like team sources are they're always trying to paint a certain narrative, right? And I have a little bit of this experience because I worked for an NBA franchise and kind of I saw from like the inside kind of how these conversations happened in real time and then how they developed to reporters. And we had a lot of reporters reach out to us. Like I remember I had reporters in Dallas reaching out to me for like just not even quotes. They were just like, hey, what's going on here? Do you know it? Can you confirm this? Like the way that they would ask questions. I'm like, dog, I'm the marketing manager for our gaming franchise. I'm not even in that building. I have no information for you, but they're
going down the staff directory,
bro. They will quite literally hit up everybody. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of these reporters, their sources are like ticket sales people. Legit. So, you can't believe everything. It's definitely smokescreen season, but I do think where there's smoke, there's fire. And when you have Browns reporters reporting on this news that has to do like nothing with their team, I think there's some validity to it. And the fact that we keep hearing about it, like, 24 hours, there's more conversations. It feels like that it's going to happen. And there was an interesting report that I read. I don't know if it's true or how serious it is, but a report that I read came from some reporter that said that Brian Callahan thinks L'Jarius Sneed is the best corner in the game and desperately wants him. And I'm assuming that's coming from Denard Wilson as well. So if that's the case, it feels like it's going to get done before the draft.
I was thinking about that yesterday. I was like, where would I rank L'Jarius Sneed as far as the cornerbacks go in today's game? Question. I had him right outside the top 5. So I didn't have him as a top 5, but if that's what you're paying to get somebody in the building, if it's top dollar, I don't mind that at all, because a year from now, like I said, cap hit's going to go up, or the cap space, and somebody else and probably 3-4 other corners are going to be higher paid than him. And
do you have Jair get paid soon?
Do you have Jair Alexander in that top 5?
I did not. I had him below Sneed, actually.
Okay, yeah,
I don't remember my exact roster, but yeah, I had him right outside the top
corners.
5.
There's at least 2 corners that are about to get paid in Surtain and Sauce.
Oh, he's about to get broken off. Patrick Surtain II is going to get broken off.
So, I mean, Ran has operated really in his tenure with the Titans. He's really been ahead of the market with a lot of his moves. The Kevin Byard move. He tried to trade away a lot of our players at the deadline. Obviously,
Jeffrey Simmons contract. Woo, looks great.
He was ahead of the market with the Jeffrey Simmons contract. So, getting this Sneed thing in, you know what? He might be the highest paid corner of all time when we sign him, possibly. It won't be for long, though.
No. Cap space is, or the cap is not real, in my opinion. But yeah, and then you brought up Diana Rossini. I mean, she said she had a tweet written out that the deal was done.
Yeah,
she was just waiting for the confirmation to put it out there. So I think we're close, and where there's smoke, there's fire. I think something's going to happen here soon. Within, I haven't thought about it, maybe the next week.
Has anybody talked to Stonehouse?
If it happens at all.
He's a realtor in Nashville.
Yeah, yep.
Why haven't we got on a realtor train yet? Yeah. With Rodgers and everybody else, we already knew if they were looking at houses, if they were at NBA, at schools and stuff. We ain't heard nothing about Sneed yet, so I don't know.
that Awuzie tweet was interesting too. Like he did like the whole eyeball emoji thing, so that kind of made me believe. It was like right around like the reports coming out for Sneed potentially to Tennessee. So something tells me that like it was almost done, and they're like, okay, look, this is gonna get done at some point in the next week or two or whatever. Like let's take our time with the details. Let's take our time with the structure. The Titans kind of have to play structure police a little bit on their side, because they have to go, okay, how much cap, like how large of a cap hit do we want in 24? Can we afford it? What's the rest of our offseason look like versus that? So there's probably some due diligence on the Titans side that has to happen as well. And it wasn't just the Titans and Colts. Like there was reports that Detroit was in the mix. I think New England was in the mix. So there's other teams that could jump out and just give him a crazy offer, and then it could get done. So I'm not 100% sold that it's happening to us, but I do feel like he is going to get traded. I was having a conversation with somebody on Twitter about it. They were basically saying, well, why would the Chiefs, trade him for a 3rd round pick? That doesn't make any sense. And my rebuttal to that was, well, on one side of the coin, compensatory picks are kind of a toss up, and you're not guaranteed a 3rd round pick for him, right? It's more like a 4th or a 5th, more than likely, right? You don't know for sure, but not only that, there's the player element to this. And what the player element is that if L'Jarius and the Chiefs both know that there's not a long-term deal on the table for him, like, then he has to get his money. Like, that is priority number one. And they're like, well, why wouldn't you stay in three-peat and get another ring? At the end of the day, he's won a championship or two with them. And now it's time to move on and get your bag, because it's not coming from Kansas City, and that secures his family. Like, number one, the player has to look out for the player. So that's why he would get traded, because he would basically say to them, like, hey, I'm at the top of my market right now. I don't have other competition right now with other corners. So he doesn't have to worry about other corners becoming available and being competition. And he doesn't have to worry about having a potential down year that would, again, affect his money. So right now is when he has to strike. The iron's hot. And if the Chiefs care even a lick about him, then they'll do the deal, which is why I think he is going to get traded before the draft.
What it's worth with the – go ahead, Jake.
I was going to say, NFL stands for not for long. You could walk out there in training camp tomorrow and tear your ACL, and that market value is gone overnight.
Gone.
For what it's worth, you were talking about Uze with the eye emoji. I had a tweet that I tweeted of Calvin Ridley versus Sneed yesterday morning, I think. Ridley liked the tweet, so I don't know if he liked it for the Ridley part or the Sneed part. I don't know, but y'all can go to his likes and see he liked it. We'll see.
Get them in the room together.
That was a good video. Yeah, that was a good matchup between them, and it also tells you, like, man, I didn't before the rumors started. Admittedly, like, obviously, I paid close attention to L'Jarius Sneed this past season, and even more so in the playoffs. And man, he had an insane year. But the thing that I like the most about his game is that he has a complete game. This guy can go man to man. This guy can get in the box and shoot a gap. Like, he's like good in run coverage. Like, there's so many things that he does well. And Mike Herndon, who's one of my favorite Titans reporters, and one of my favorite just guys who talks about the Titans in general, said something actually really, really, really good about PFF and corners and just defensive backs in general. And this is the case for some positions, not all. But when you look at his PFF grade, it doesn't tell the whole story of who he is as a player, right? So, like, I think that the specifics around PFF grading for secondaries is like, you're only graded on the passes you're defending.
Yep.
Like, if on targets, if you lock a guy down and take him out of the play, you don't receive any point for that. Like, there's no grade for that. So there's times where he was locking dudes down and taking them out of the game, like big time players. And he doesn't get a grade. He doesn't get graded on that. So you can't really look at PFF or like advanced analytics, and be like, okay, this is the player he is. So at the end of the day, if you add a player to your team that just takes the number one guy on their side out of the game, if you look at our matchups in the division, taking the number one guy out of the game for the Colts means Michael Pittman Jr. is non-existent. Taking the number one guy out of the game for the Texans means that Nico Collins is non-existent. You know what I'm saying? Like, you all of a sudden, you kind of even the playing field for your defense, and it changes the dynamic of how we can play defense. And so that's another reason why it's like, don't overpay him. Screw that. Overpay him. Like, get that guy on my team.
It ain't our money at the end of the day.
Right. Yeah, speaking of Mike Herndon, have you guys seen this Titans media member madness that they've been putting on? I've been following it closely. It's pretty creative. Shout out to Brett Gilbert. He's the guy putting that on over there. And then Morning Sensei, saw you in the comments. Mike Herndon, he's in the finals. I think he just beat Buck. So they should be posting that later today. I think I didn't see who was winning between PK and Teron. I think Teron was winning.
TD's going to smoke him.
I think that's how I was leaning. I was hoping PK was going to win that one just because Mike is PK is Mike's boss.
Yes.
So it would have been super exciting to see Mike beat PK. Does he take over as that lead media member? But yeah, I think Teron's going to take that, and then I personally I'm going to be voting for Mike in the finals. So it'd be super interesting. I thought that was just worth bringing up. But I think we've covered Sneed in depth. Let's go ahead and just talk about this free agency cycle thus far. And since we're talking about Sneed, let's go ahead and start on the defense. We just brought in Sebastian Joseph No Day. He no longer wants to be the SJD. to pair up with Jeffrey Simmons. So, in my opinion, just looking at Sebastian Joseph's career, played really well next to Aaron Donald over there in Los Angeles, and then moved over into Brandon Staley's defense over at the Chargers, where they did him no favors at all.
No.
It was a low. I don't think we have the specifics, but it looks like it's going to be a very low deal for Sebastian Joseph short term. And you compare him with Jeffrey Simmons, get him that running mate. How I view that is maybe a slight improvement over like a Tierre Tart. And it's still going to be short term. I don't think it fixes the situation by any means. But how do you guys feel about Sebastian Joseph coming in?
Yeah, I like it. I think it gives you good depth along that sort of interior D-line. He's really versatile. He can play from nose to the 5-tech. So that's going to be really important in Denard's, what we think is going to be Denard's defense because I was talking to a buddy yesterday, and I think this defense is going to be a lot closer to the old Dick LeBeau defenses that we saw, especially on third downs where guys are just standing up and you don't know where they're coming from. So having a versatile guy like that can literally play from 0-tech all the way to 5 and could probably line up outside if you really need him to or send him around the edge on a stunt. That really helps with the disguising of the blitz packages and the sim pressures that we'll have. So people say Tavondre Sweat. We'll talk about that later on. I don't want to take a guy at 38 that really is 2 downs, like a 2-down player. That doesn't make sense, you know. If you're taking a guy at 38, he needs to be able to play all 3 downs. So he's going to be important real quick. He'll be important, obviously, and that big, heavy nose tech is important on first and second down, but you can find that in an undrafted guy or the 7th round, So,
yeah, Sebastian Joseph was, I just felt like a depth signing. A guy that they really liked, had a lot of potential, found his way on the 49ers towards the end of last season and played through into the Super Bowl for them, but didn't really contribute a whole lot during the playoffs. But yeah, I agree. The whole Chargers stint with him, that defense wasn't necessarily built to stop the run. But I will say, I think that having Jeffrey Simmons next to him will help him quite a bit. He does have the versatility of a Danico Autry. I don't think he was meant to be the replacement for that. And I think there's still a good chance that the Titans draft a nose tackle that can be a legitimate stopgap in the middle, play that 1-tech consistently. But I like it just as a pure depth signing. It doesn't get me excited. I didn't wake up and be like, oh, thank God we signed Sebastian Joseph yesterday, but I am excited for the depth in that area. I'm bummed that we missed on Eric Armstead. I'm really bummed we missed on DJ Reader. I thought that would have been just an insane pairing. But sometimes you swing and you miss, and Ran hit some and he lost some. And I think that's due to when you put your eggs in as many baskets as you possibly can, sometimes that means that some of them are going to fall through. And honestly, another thing, as we grade this free agency for Ran as a precursor, is that you have to realize this is a rebuilding team and players know that. So DJ Reader or some of these other guys who are probably on, again, the last couple years of their prime, probably didn't want to spend it on a team that's rebuilding and they're not sure what it's going to be. So I think on one side of the coin, some players might see Brian Callahan, a rising star at head coach. They might see Ran Carthon, a rising star at GM. Will Levis, who looks like a rising star at quarterback, and say, okay, I see this. They're a season away. And others might have looked at it and been like, I'd rather not take that risk. I'd rather just go to a Detroit or go to another team that I feel like is going to contend. So I think that's also, as we grade, we should keep that in mind, that Ran Carthon is fighting an uphill battle in the negotiation side of things.
Culture's set in those places too. That's one thing. We don't have our culture set yet. That's a big thing with guys coming in. You're not going to go into it's like going into a job and not going into the interview process and not seeing what's at the facility yet. It's sort of tough.
Yeah, DJ Reader, by all accounts, he was in Detroit regardless of money at the very start. I don't think we ever really had a real shot, even if we threw a bag at him. I think that's where he wanted to go, and it is what it is. I mean, as we build up this culture, we'll get those free agency signings, and I think Tennessee is going to be a spot for free agents in the future, but we have to get there first. Next up, we got 2 other signings, 2.5, we'll say. We'll go to the inside linebackers. They obviously brought in Kenneth Murray. And this is a guy that media seems to be pretty far down on. And by all accounts, probably right with that. Coming from that same defense that Sebastian Joseph Day came from. And then they got Dr. Gibby. They brought him back on the tender. So as of right now, that's probably your starting 2 inside linebackers. And I'm starting to get a little worried. Who is going to wear the green dot? Is it Dr. Gibby? Because as of right now, that's where I'm leaning. And if you look at, it's got to be. And you're looking at just kind of Denard Wilson in the past. I was thinking, well, maybe it won in Philly or in Baltimore. They had somebody else wearing the green dot for them. That was not the case. It was Roquan last year in Baltimore. Year before that, it was T.J. Edwards in Philly. I think it's going to a linebacker. And as of right now, it's Jack Gibbons. And that scares me a little bit.
Vrabel did praise him for how smart he was.
So I mean, he's a doctor. He's got a doctorate.
Maybe, right? Maybe Dr. Gibby is better in between the ears than he is physically, right? Because I felt like at one point early on in Jack Gibbons' career, like when he first started getting snaps for us, it was like, okay, who's this guy? Like, he's doing his thing. Sideline to sideline, he's got good speed. He's plugging the holes here. Like, he's doing okay. But towards the end of the season last year, he kind of got exposed several times. And there were some games, like I believe the Jaguars game in Jacksonville, he was getting cooked. And it was like really bad. But I think that was probably a combination of the defense as a whole lacking some talent and us just not being like firm where we needed to be as a unit. So who knows? Like, maybe that's super optimism. I would very much prefer for them to go and bring somebody else in. I'm not quite sure who's available still on the market. So
give me Isaiah Simmons. I'm in for it. Let's do it.
Who knows? I guess you'll be right from your prediction a couple weeks ago, and we'll just have the most athletic inside linebackers of all time.
How I see it is go ahead.
The thing is with linebackers, I mean, it's just, I think people are putting a little too much stock into the position as a whole. I'd rather we load up on the secondary. The linebackers are the linebackers. I'll be honest, people really didn't care about linebackers until this postseason run where they actually mattered and showed up. You got the 49ers, their linebackers play well. The Baltimore Ravens, their linebackers play well. I think people are putting way too much stock into. It's an important position, don't get me wrong, but how much of an effect it has on the total schematic defense. It's important, but really in the scheme, a linebacker can simply be a guy that relays the plays in or a guy that scrapes and fills gaps. Like, come on.
How I view how they're going to tackle the inside linebacker position going forward is I think you've heard of the RBC, running back by committee. I think we're looking at an inside linebacker by committee going forward. If it's Dr. Gibby and Kenneth Murray on first and second down, you could bring in an Otis Reese in coverage. He can line up and man up on a tight end or running back. And I think there's one other guy that could bring in. Maybe it's Isaiah Simmons. That'd be great to have him line up with that, with the athleticism. How Ran has really approached free agency thus far is it might be guys that might not have it between the ears just yet, but he's bringing in athletes. That's where he's going. Kenneth Murray, RAS score of 9.88. He is way up there. Sebastian Joseph Day, 9.44. Athletic and on the interior. And then we look at our next guy, Chidobe Awuzie, Cheeto, 9.64. So he stated that we got to get younger, stronger, and faster, and really emphasize faster. And that's proof in the pudding. He's getting athletes. And Jack Gibbons, if we're going back to that, he's not athletic. He's got the length.
I got it. I know who we can bring in. So I'm taking a look at the available inside linebackers. And there's two names on here that really intrigue me. The first name is Quan Alexander. That would be interesting. He's had quite a bit of experience on the West Coast and played in some really good defenses. So I think there's some potential there. But here's a guy that would absolutely fit in this defense, right? He's way past his prime, but he's going to wear the green dot with pride and bring some energy. Shaq Leonard. Go get Shaq Leonard and just fill that veteran hole in the room You could get him for a pretty affordable price. He's healthy. He didn't play great in Philadelphia, but he's caught up to his health issues. And who knows, like take a flyer, get a 1 year, fill the gap, bring a leader, literally plug a leader into the defense. And it's a huge opportunity for Shaq Leonard also, because he kind of needs a place that can like believe in him and give him a chance to be the guy again, because he got pushed out at Indy, even when he became healthy. So, hey, there's your opportunity. There's your green dot wearer right there. There's your captain of the defense right along with Jeffrey Simmons.
Doesn't have to worry about getting launched by Derrick Henry in practice either. I mean,
no, he's gone. The division's gone.
No, don't have to worry about that.
Could be a good mentor for Otis Reese too.
No doubt.
Yeah, wouldn't mind that. Man, Otis Reese, I think could be very good.
I do too.
I think he could be a day one starter. Old staff loved him. New staff seems to like him as well. And so bros in the network. Titans are going 5-1-5. Yep, I stated that on Twitter a couple while back. But I guess we gotta find those other 5-5 too, because we're still lacking in that area. But yeah, I really like Otis Reese. Like what I saw, definitely fits the athlete mold. And like I said, I don't mind him in coverage. And then we got a slew on the back end as far as linebackers go too. Luke Gifford, JoJo Doman, Chance Campbell, Garrett Wallow. This is the only position group on the Titans roster we actually have bodies. I think JoJo Doman's, Garrett Wallow, they're out the door. Chance Campbell, I could see maybe taking that next step and be a rotational inside linebacker 4-5. Obviously, he's got the athleticism to contribute on special teams as well. So definitely wouldn't mind that. And then, yeah, let's go back to Cheeto. So obviously, you don't want him to be your number one corner, I would say, but he brings in the leadership. Great cornerback too, and definitely fits this mold that Denard Wilson is trying to bring in. Great in man coverage, and was played a little out of position, I think, last season. They played a lot of zone over there in Cincy and didn't really fit into what he does best. But I like how this secondary is starting to shape up. They got to bring in somebody at safety, though. We alluded to it. Obviously, they brought in Justin Simmons for a visit last week.
They did?
Before last. I believe so. At least it was scheduled. Maybe it hasn't happened yet. But It sounds like the money is a little high for everybody in the league right now, by all accounts. But, I mean, behind Hooker and Molden, which are two injury-prone safeties, they're good when they're out there. They're not super athletes like you'd like to see back there. But behind them, you got Mike Brown and Shaheem Carter. And that's it. Right. You got to have depth there. And I think Denard likes throwing out three safeties out there sometimes, and that's something you cannot do right now. So
no, I feel like we're going to draft one too. You know, there's a lot of good safeties in the draft. I like Dadrion Alexander, if I'm not mistaken. I like him. So you know, we still got the draft to plug holes and free agent signings too. But it seems like we've went really cold on things in prep for a big move. That's just the way it seems, money wise. Yeah.
Sneed feels like he's coming in. It feels like that trade more and more every day makes sense. And like I said, where there's smoke, there's fire. We wouldn't be seeing this much noise coming from this trade if there wasn't something there. But as far as the safeties go, I know that Marcus May had his visit. And that one seems like a really good fit. But other than Marcus May, there's some really good safeties left on the market. You have Jamal Adams still out there, Justin Simmons, obviously, Quandre Diggs still available, Micah Hyde is still available, which I thought he signed. That was Jordan Poyer in Jacksonville. But yeah, Micah Hyde's still available. I mean, there's a ton of talent still out there. Terrell Edmonds, who is on the roster, is still available out there. So I'm not too worried about it. And then Elijah Molden obviously makes sense for him to plug in at nickel on like a rotational side of things, but he's been fairly productive for us, gets the ball, has at least one solid turnover. Yeah, I think he has the most pick sixes or like defensive touchdowns on our roster. So there's some talent there. So yeah, I'm not too worried about the safety position because there's so much talent left. It just feels like Ran doesn't have to overspend in that category. It's the one position he doesn't have to overspend.
Somebody's
Yeah.
got to set that market for that second group of safeties. I
Mm.
feel like once one of those guys signs, the dominoes will fall because they're sort of waiting as well. I don't want to agree to this money if such and such is going to get more. So it seems like it's just a waiting game, a market thing.
Yeah, I think they bring one more in free agency, maybe a low end talent on the back end. But just looking at the safety class, I know a lot of draft media are very low on the safety class, and I guess there's not that top guy out there. But in the Titans mock draft I did live yesterday, Tyler Nubin was sitting there at 38, and we went Quinion Mitchell in the first after we traded back. We went Tyler Nubin in the second, just solidifying that defense. And I think there's a decent amount that are there late in the draft. I mean, you can get a Cole Bishop, a Trey Taylor, a Kenny Logan Jr. There's a decent amount of guys that I like down there. Stoney's kind
be a bit of a learning
Taiwan,
curve, too.
several Seattle. Definitely agree with that.
I was too. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the guy I wanted to see back. And if you were to bring him in and that was your third, I was more than happy with that. He played well for us last season and familiar with Denard Wilson's system. And then that kind of brings us back to Marcus May. That's a guy that played with Denard Wilson for quite a while. So he's going to have insight in there. So if they bring him in, I'm going to be happy with it just because I know he knows what he's doing. So I'd be fine with that. Awesome. But let's go ahead. Let's hop into
I
this
want to grade it real
offense.
quick with the defense.
Let's go just defense in general. Well, let's start with you, Jonathan. What would you go?
Well, so far I'm a little uninspired on the defensive side. I think the L'Jarius Sneed trade would certainly flip my opinion on that. So grading the defensive additions, love Chidobe Awuzie. Big fan of Kenneth Murray, actually. I think for what he's going to do on the defense, I don't think he's supposed to come in and be the best coverage linebacker. I think he's going to fly at the ball just like Denard Wilson wants to do. So I think it's a good fit. Overall, I'd give it a C plus or B minus maybe. I'm happy with the moves. I just don't think it's quite enough to get us there. So we'll see what the rest of the offseason shows us.
For sure. What about you, B-Will?
Yeah, I'm in the C range as well. I think probably like a C plus, like you said. It's just it hasn't really the Cheeto signing sort of laying the foundation for this defense. You know, it's a lot of this stuff can't be fixed over one off season and then 2 months of free agency or 2 weeks of free agency even. So, you know, we still got the draft to go, but free agency wise for defense, it's probably a C right now, and I think Sneed will even take it up to probably like a B plus. You know, I'm not going to say it'll be an A free agency if we get Sneed because we're still a little lacking on the D line. I'd like to have seen us done a little more, especially at edge, because we got some guys out of contract next year at edge. So it would have been nice to sort of have a Chase Young, even though the neck injury, that sort of scared the hell out of me. I ain't going to lie. But before that, I was all in with having a younger guy on the D-line. That way we're not just hell-bent and sort of handcuffed by Arden Key for next year if he does well.
There's concerns at every level, right? Like, that's the problem I have. Like, if you look at every level of the defense, you're like, oh, we need some help there, need some help there, need some help there. And that is a cause for concern.
Got to solve a problem. I don't think we've solved a problem defensively
Exactly.
yet.
Agreed.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well put.
When I look at this, and I was all in on Chase Young, even with the neck injury. Kind of thought about that, and I was like, it's going to be back by training camp. I'm fine with that. And it was reported initially it was guaranteed $13 million, and everybody was like, "Oh, that's way too much money." It seems to be pretty incentive based. I don't remember what the bottom dollar is.
Schefter got it wrong.
I think it's like 6 or 7 million, right? Like the new.
Yeah, I think it was 7 if I remember right.
Yeah,
and I think that's what fans need to understand.
Yeah,
guaranteed is not fully guaranteed money, and you got to play with those words a lot. But when I look at this, I really like the Chidobe Awuzie signing. Kenneth Murray, when I look at that, I mean, I like Kenneth Murray as a player, but when I look at what was on the board there, we could have approached. We pretty much paid top dollar for maybe the lesser talent that was out there. Sebastian Joseph Day, kind of similar. We got a good deal on him, though. I mean, this is uninspiring. If Sneed is brought in, that does change this, but I'm looking at C minus maybe.
Yeah.
I can't go D, but C minus, almost there. I think if we kind of collectively put our grades together, we're looking at like a C so far. And if you bring in Sneed, this could be a B. And I don't mind that. And then the draft is going to change a lot of this. This is where we're going to build this depth. And like we said, this is not a 1 year turnaround. But let's go ahead. Let's hop into this offense.
Let me say one more thing about the defense.
Yeah.
I think what would change, like what I'm finding myself starting to think, is I'm starting to look at 38 and going, man, a edge rusher sounds pretty good at 38. And I know B-Will is not a huge fan of, T'Vondre Sweat or maybe a nose tackle at 38. But my God, I'm just like, bro, we need something on that D. We need to add a little bit of juice to that D line. And I think that the Titans, with a snap of a finger, bringing in L'Jarius Sneed and then getting a premium pass rusher, or maybe one of the top pass rushers, maybe like a Darius Robinson or a Chop or somebody like that would really change the outlook of the defense. Because if the season started today, we would be in serious trouble.
100%. And then, I played around with the Darius Robinson thoughts earlier this week because I love him. I think he fits what we're trying to do here. He does have, you can kind of see him probably going on the first, but Will Levis was supposed to be in the top 3 last season. People fall. That's how the draft operates. And if we're looking at it, who's going to be around there? Darius Robinson, Brayley Trice, maybe Chris Braswell, which the Titans were in the building for Alabama's Pro Day yesterday. And even guys that I like that are a little bit lower, like a Jonah Ellis out of Utah. Really like his game. Maybe doesn't have the big length, but dude's got a motor on him, gets after the quarterback, and anybody in that Utah defense I really like. So I'm not ruling out defensive line at 38, but if I do go that direction, I want them to have at least outside versatility with the inside. And that's kind of how I think about it. But I'd be fine with that. Yeah, Adisa Isaac, little guy I'm a little bit lower on. I love Chop. Chop is my
Chop, though. Yeah.
My
Chop
number
fan.
one.
He's going to be a first round pick
right
though.
Now. Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
It was nice before the combine when you can get him in the mock at 38. And I did it.
His stock got
every
pumped
time.
a little bit.
Adisa Isaac, not the athlete of Chop, but he does have a better pass rush game plan, I'll say. He's more complete now. Maybe not the upside, but he has a better floor as of now. And I wouldn't mind that. But let's go ahead, hop into this offense. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different signings right now, going from Mason Rudolph, Tony Pollard, the big one in Calvin Ridley, Shadiq Charles, Lloyd Cushenberry, and then they brought back NWI, the roster pirate, of course. So looking at just starting at the bottom down, starting with Mason Rudolph, Malik Willis is gone. This is the way it's going to happen. It's either, I think we're going to see a lot of him in the preseason this upcoming season, and we're going to try to build up him as much as we can to get any kind of trade compensation. And if we see nothing, he's out the building cut. You guys see it any differently?
I don't know. I think we'll probably keep him along just as a third quarterback. You always keep 3 quarterbacks.
He could be that
still
emergency
on a rookie deal. He's still on a rookie deal. He's got a 3rd round rookie deal, so you might as well just keep him and try and work him next year too. Do the same thing.
Yeah, I don't know if you keep 3 quarterbacks this season for sure. I'm a big fan of keeping Malik. I was pitchforking for Malik big time at the start of last season. I don't think he's a lost cause necessarily. You're paying him $400,000 this year, so it doesn't make any sense to cut. I think it makes sense to hold the roster spot for him because, like you guys said, he'll play in the preseason, he'll show some flashes, and then maybe that's enough to move him. The trade compensation for those that class of quarterbacks is not good. So
it's going to be probably a 6th, 7th round,
6th or 7th rounder, or maybe a late round pick swap, maybe. And to me, weighing that is just not super worth it, in my opinion. The Titans have 4 picks in like 167 or something like that and beyond, 3 picks in the 200s.
Yep.
I'm not super interested in replacing Malik for that reason. The only reason why I would advocate for Malik to be gone this year is so that Will Levis can wear number 7, because I think number 7 is a better number. That's the only reason. Other than that, he should stay on the roster. Obviously, you're not extending him beyond his rookie contract, but I think he's worth it. The talent is clearly there. And now Malik, no one's talking about this because Will Levis is the guy, but now Malik has a legitimate shot to have some continuity in the quarterback room and learn, because he's going to be learning all the same as Will Levis from Brian Callahan and some of these other gurus. So the stability intrigues me. And I think that you likely won't keep Malik on the same roster if Levis is the guy. So who knows? But I think you play your hand as best you can strategically to see if you can get some value for him either this year or next year.
I think it's of note that Mason Rudolph coming in is going to be the highest paid this year on the Titans as far as the quarterbacks go. Which Mason Rudolph, I followed him for quite a while coming out of OK State. I mean, he's a hometown boy for me, but I'm not an OSU fan by any means. But he's a guy that you can see come in. He has a winning record as a backup over at Pittsburgh and was better than Kenny Pickett last year. And I mean, he acquired some draft compensation this past season as well. So I wouldn't mind that. If I'm looking at Malik Willis, if he's not there, I think they could potentially try to bring in somebody at the back end of the draft, maybe like a John Rice Plumlee at a UCF, throwing the ball to Javon Baker. Really like the athleticism there, and I think he kind of adds in something very similar. So it's a different direction they might be able to go in. But overall, the quarterback position, it's Will Levis, and this whole season is going to predicate on how he has success. We're talking about these guys in second and third place, and if they're out there any significant time, the season's probably a wash anyways, in my opinion. And that's just kind of how I see it. But next up, running backs. We got Tony Pollard, 1A, 1B with Tajay Spears. I guess you got Hassan Haskins at the bottom of the roster with Julius Chestnut as well.
No, you don't. Not for long.
No, he is on the roster as of now, but time is ticking.
Last year was rookie deal, right?
I believe so. Yeah. So
still awaiting trial, right?
Yeah. I think Chestnut's probably the better prospect right now anyways. So I could see them adding somebody at the back end of the draft as well to kind of maybe supplant both of those players. We got to have a returner on this team. As of right now, we really don't have a whole lot of that. But Tony Pollard, back to him. I like the deal. Initially when it came out, didn't. But obviously there's always more specifics than we know initially. But Tony Pollard, Tajay Spears should pair very well together. Obviously, Pollard coming off the injury. Came on down the stretch. Really liked him there. The Titans did schedule the visit with Marshawn Lloyd.
Really?
I loved Marshawn Lloyd at Senior Bowl. I thought he was going to athletically test better than he did, which will knock him down a little bit. But I mean, he was looked at as on some boards as RB1 coming out, which I never saw it like that. But he's a dude. He can catch the ball in the backfield, and he fits this mold of the Spears Pollard 49ers backfield. Maybe not the top end speed, but it's a dude that they could maybe bring in the 4th, 5th round. And Rand has proved that he's not afraid to take a running back in the first 3, even if you don't need him, if it's best player on his board. But yeah, how you guys feeling about Tony Pollard?
Yeah, I like the Pollard deal. I just, I'm really excited about having the versatility in the backfield and them being similar profile backs where we don't tip our hand. I alluded to that before, but that's something I'm really, really excited about. And it's not like they're similar profile and there's a drop-off between them. There's not a drop-off between the two. You can plug either or in. Yep. One is gassed. The other one can come in. They're both catching the ball out the backfield. Pollard a little better than Spears. But I'm really excited to see what the running back room does. I mean, it'll be a good little safety valve for Levis. So I'm excited about the running back room.
Yeah, I'm more excited for the signing than I thought I was going to be. When he was signed, I was, especially as like basically the first player in free agency to kick off tampering, to be like, yeah, he's signing with the Titans. And obviously it made sense from like a hometown standpoint. He's from Memphis. A lot of his family lives here. So getting closer to home, seeing the opportunity with Derrick Henry leaving, like it all made sense on paper. But I think it might have actually been B. Will's tweet that I saw and read that and went, you know what? That actually makes so much sense, because we have, for the past several years, have been complaining that our offense is just very one-dimensional. When Derrick Henry trots onto the field, you go, okay, here we go. And when he trots off the field, you go, okay, here we go. Like we know what's happening. And we know this is the case because I think it was Zaire Franklin and maybe EJ Speed, I think, the linebackers for the Colts, they have a podcast. And they were talking they literally were talking about it on the podcast. Like, yeah, oh, here comes Derek. Okay, we know who's getting the ball. Like, time to stack the. So, like, look, in 2019, you're doing that big run in the playoffs, and Derek is just absolutely manhandling every defense he plays against. I get it. Like, that should be your identity. He's the king. But at a certain point, like, you have to adjust and you have to adapt, and we were unable to do that with Derrick Henry. So that was the thing that got me the most excited about the Tony Pollard signing, is that I was like, okay, you're not going to telegraph your hand when these guys come in and out of the game, because their games are so similar, and in theory you should just get a fresh body, and the offense should be able to click at the same rate of speed or the same efficiency. So that's what got me excited, is I think that makes a ton of sense. Tony Pollard is a very, very dynamic player. And if you look at like the last calendar year for him, I mean, it was that leg injury was serious. Like, that was a really big deal. And so for him to come back and still play, maybe not at 100%, like, he came back pretty quickly, made it back in time for the season. And that Dallas offense was kind of weird for him that year too. So I think it makes a ton of sense. I'm really excited about it.
Yep. We got TNT, Tony and Tajay. It's dynamite. But then hopping into the wide receivers, obviously biggest signing we've had thus far, Calvin Ridley in the door. And this is a guy that hasn't played football a lot in the past couple of years. And similar to Pollard, was coming on strong there towards the end of the season. Yards per game consistently went up down the stretch. Those drops cleared up as well. And then they brought in NWI. So we're looking at DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley is your 1-2 punch. Then you got maybe Burks, maybe Phillips on the back end, NWI. I mean, they've got depth at the position. You need one more body, in my opinion. I don't think it comes to free agency, though. I guess they could maybe, if they were to like maybe trade Burks, they bring in a Tyler Boyd on a one-year deal, be fine with it. But obviously Hopkins in the last year of his deal, you got to find somebody else. I don't know if it's at 7. I don't know if it's 38 or a little bit later, but we're seeing this offense start to come together a little bit, and I'm liking what I'm seeing here. Calvin Ridley, if you guys watched the OTP with him on there, this guy is a dog.
Great, man.
Seeing him tear up talking about his mama, love it. I love it. So I think we might have one of the best 1-2 punches in the league at wide receiver now, but it might not be for long. And if we're going 1-2-3 punch, it might be one of the lowest. So, I mean, you can see that a couple different ways. But as far as Calvin Ridley goes, I'm super high on it. Do you guys see it any other way? Any hot takes?
Man, so with the receivers, it's something we alluded to when we were talking about the defense of solving problems. Ran has solved a problem. So, that's something I'm really excited about. We've got a receiver room, and I'm still wanting us to take a receiver at 7, honestly, because D-Hop's not going to be here. 2 30-year-old, well, Ridley's not exactly 30 yet, but 2 30-year-old receivers should not impact or take you or not have you drafting a blue chip receiver at 7, especially if it's Neighbors or Odunze. I have them in the same tier. I'm still taking them there, and that just solidifies the offensive or the wide receiver room. So, I'm really excited about the Ridley signing, though, man. The more I look into him, the more excited I get, and you can't really say that about a lot of signings sometimes. But Ridley, the more you see him in interviews, the more film you watch of him, it just gets even better, man. And I'm excited to have him. I'm more excited to see him in training camp than I am anything else, to be honest. See just how his raw speed is in practice, stuff like that. It's gonna be fun to watch, man.
Yeah, what gets me really excited about Calvin Ridley is that, like you said it best, B. Will, like, it solves a problem. When he was signed, I started going, okay, like, I think we were all in agreement. We were like heavy wide receiver at 7 leading up to that signing. And then after that signing, I still think I find myself falling in that category for the same reason that you just explained. But this is why I love Ran Carthon, why I think really highly of him so far in his career with the Titans, is that he's closing gaps. He's filling needs prior to the draft and giving himself leverage. Now, if it's a trade down, it makes sense. Now, if it's picking Joe Alt, it makes sense. Now, if it's picking Rome Odunze or Neighbors, it makes sense. He has the leverage in all of these decisions to make a good move for the Titans. So now the tough decision for him is going, where do I want this blue chip player? Or in evaluating the rest of the draft, I can trade down to 13 or 14 comfortably and still land a blue chip player. So there's a lot of opportunity there. But as far as the wide receiver thing goes, I think looking at the offense, I love Calvin Ridley as a fit because he can do a little of everything. And if you look at kind of how the Jaguars used him last year, they really limited his route tree to the outside of the numbers, which he does. He runs one of the best stop and goes and one of the best comeback routes that I've ever seen. Just absolutely beautiful. Like he cooked L'Jarius Sneed on a curl as well in their matchup too. So like he's dominant, but be able to move him around the offense. And so the last thing I'll say about the wide receivers is that I think where I land is I would really like to take a receiver at 7 because I think that talent is just immense. And so you fill that need. D-Hop walks after next season and you got younger at the position. And then now you're building that room continuity. But if the Titans trade down and take like a Fuanga, or if they take like a JC Latham or something like that, some Marius Mims, I think what would happen for me is that I would be okay with it if it meant that, like if we go into the season, we're like, okay, Treylon Burks is wide receiver 3, Kyle Phillips and Nick Westbrook-Akine are all going to kind of interchange. Nick Westbrook slides into the X. Maybe you use Treylon as the Y or you put him in the slot, whatever. I think that I'm kind of excited to see what Treylon Burks can do in the slot. I'm excited to see where, I think for this offense is it doesn't limit Calvin Ridley the way that he was limited last season, and it doesn't limit Treylon Burks the way he's been limited so far, right? You put Treylon Burks back in position to be successful in the way that he was in college. And so, and Kyle Phillips, by the way, I'm a huge Kyle Phillips fan. I know that he's been hurt and you can't really rely on that, but he's phenomenal. So I think that he should see some significant playing time as well. But I don't think it stops you from drafting the guy just because there's been so many question marks and you can't go through the season with more question marks. So, but yeah, as a whole, the Calvin Ridley signing, I was ecstatic about.
Yeah. And then going back into the 107, we covered the Sneed rumors. Let's go to the Droomers, the draft rumors. I mean, I think it goes without a doubt. There's 4 quarterbacks going off this board before the Titans pick. We look at Chicago, Caleb Williams. He's already buying his house there, in my opinion. And then you got the Jaden Daniels, Drake May. You have the J.J. McCarthy talk coming up now. I mean, I think it's Washington Patriots. They're going quarterback as well. Arizona is kind of one of the 2 wild cards, in my opinion, here. They have reported that they're listening to trade talks. They could be that trade down with Minnesota, maybe. Could we see Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, J.J. McCarthy all go off the board 1, 2, 3, 4? I see the potential there. And if one of those doesn't go there at 4, I think it's probably New York trading down maybe. You could go Chargers. I could see trading down as well, maybe as well. But I think regardless, 4 of these guys are going. And then there's been the rumors that Malik Neighbors is a lot of teams' wide receiver 1. And personally, I see that as well. I don't think the Titans, I don't think Ran Carthon is going to have Neighbors over Harrison. So
They might. I think the entire league has Neighbors over Harrison, if we're being completely honest.
They might. And then with Harrison not doing anything through the free agents or the draft, that's fine. I don't mind that at all. But when I look at the size, speed, and all that, that's Jamar Chase. That's T. Higgins. That's what
Callahan That's the flavor likes. Of the month.
That's the flavor of the month. And I think he fits the mold a little bit more. But yeah, and then Cortland talking about in the comments, there's a chance. I give it a very low chance Marvin Harrison Jr. could be a Titan.
We're twerking down Broadway if that happens, boys.
Exactly. And personally, I have
hilarious.
Neighbors a little higher as well. But, I mean, if that happens, I'm doing backflips. I'm tickled pink. I'm all about that.
I'm just happy for what we can say to Colts fans. Marvin Harrison's going to be at Titans games.
That's
and we got the better Marvin Harrison. I'm going to say it off the bat. I'm shameless.
Could you imagine
I don't
if
give
they
a
win
damn.
Sneed out of the Colts, and then they bring in Marvin Harrison in the draft? That's just sticking it to Indy. I'd be all for it. But I mean, even if that doesn't happen, Neighbors is going to be on the board. Alt is going to be on the board. The Titans are in a win-win situation. Rand can't mess this up. I'm always team trade back, as I always will be, and even if I'm in the minority on that. But if they do stick and pick at 107, we got a cornerstone on offense, in my opinion. I don't mind that at all.
Then look at the receiver room after that.
Yeah,
then look at this
then
offense.
It's number one, in my opinion. Number one.
Well,
we're doing backwards.
That's what kind of leads me. This conversation is so interesting, and this is probably a whole nother show, so I'm going to be completely brief, and I'm sure we'll talk about this a million times before the draft, but that's why Odunze at 7. Let's be honest. Can we be real for a second? The choice that the Titans are going to have is it's going to be Joe Alt versus Odunze. That's going to be the real choice. That's what's going to happen at 7. And what is really intriguing is that when you look at a lot of these like national media mock drafts, and they all have Rome Odunze falling to Chicago, they go, look at this wide receiver room. Is there a better room in the NFL? You got Keenan Allen, you got DJ Moore, now you got Rome Odunze, and blah 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 blah. And I'm thinking to myself, if the Titans take Rome Odunze at 7, then you're saying the same thing. Is this not the best wide receiver room in the NFL, or at least has the potential to be, right? So when you say that, I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, Joe Alt obviously is an incredible talent. He's going to be a bona fide, all-pro through his career. But because of the insane talent at tackle, and because of who our offensive line coach is, and because of all the things our head coach and our GM has said to national media in the past month, leads me to believe that they're going to go get an incredible talent, blue chip talent at wide receiver. By the way, a guy who caught over 1,600 yards, by the way. Like, Rome is just getting sprinkled into the bottom of that tier because of how talented the other two guys are. But Odunze is a bona fide wide receiver 1 in any other draft. And so if you have a chance to take that guy and still add developmental talent at tackle, when you have a strong position coach, that makes a ton of sense to me. So it's intriguing. It's fascinating, but I don't think that Joe Alt is the slam dunk pick at 7 that people think he is.
No,
I think with Alt,
kind of been with that. And I still love Fashanu as well. The difference between tackle 1 to even like tackle 5 is not huge.
No.
Joe Alt is an amazing run blocker. He's kind of a waist bender in pass pro, but he doesn't give up a lot of sacks. I think he's given up 2 in the past 2 seasons. Fashanu, 0 in his entire career.
Dancing Bears.
Love it. So there's
what are we going to be doing more of, Jake?
We're going to be throwing the ball. We're airing it out.
Okay, then. So why are Titans fans so hell-bent on the guy that's a better run blocker than the guy that's never given up a sack in his college career playing in a Penn State Vrabel offense?
Yep.
I mean, they're doing hard play action fakes. Come on now. For me, we've got to take advantage of Bill Callahan. I was talking about this yesterday. We've got to take advantage of Bill Callahan. I'm not going to say I'd be disappointed if we draft Alt at 7, but I'm looking at what could have been if we would have taken a receiver. And this is also if we sign Pete from New Orleans, who only gave up 2 sacks last year.
Yep.
So if we sign Pete from New Orleans, he can be a stopgap left tackle. We draft a developmental left tackle and let Callahan just work with him. Don't put pressure on him. We know how first-year left tackles are. People are overrating how well first-year left tackles do in the league. It's a tough league, especially in our division.
There's several stopgaps, I think, that are still out there, from Pete to Josh Jones